Welcome to the Homefront Podcast, hosted by me, Becca Bookman. The Homefront Podcast aims to introduce you to the people, initiatives, and ideas shaping Israel from within. There has been a lot of attention, rightly so, on those on the front lines of defending our country. But what about those they left behind, their wives and their partners? In an instant, their lives were transformed. They became the sole caretakers of their households, and they were left alone to manage the mental and emotional toll of having a loved one at war. They carry a heavy burden for our country, and yet their struggles are very unknown. On today's episode, I'm joined by Sapir Bluzer, co-founder and chairperson of the IDF Reserve Wives Forum. We'll be talking about her personal experience during wartime, what the forum is doing to advocate for the wives of IDF Reserve soldiers, and the challenges that still lie ahead. Welcome to the show, Sapir.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell me, Sapir, how is your Zionism doing today?
So my Zionism is about unity and the understanding that we have to fight for our unity and the understanding of how strong and what great powers we have in our nation.
Everyone in this country pretty much knows somebody who was called to serve in this war. Often it was unexpected and for an extended period of time. Your husband was called on October 7th. What has been your wartime story?
And what happened in October 7th, it's going to be a story that we will tell, I guess, for many years. And each person in Israel has his story. For me, Shabbat, early morning, we got a phone call. My husband, Yair, got a phone call from his commander saying, come quick, bring your soldiers. And on that spot, like on really close, while he finished the phone call, the alarms were starting to sound in our where we live. We live near Jerusalem in a very quiet village in the mountains. So we don't use to alarms or any kind of noise, not in Shabbat morning. And we quickly went to the shelter we have in our home, and I picked my 2-month-old daughter. She's our first daughter. And we sat there in the shelter while my husband is calling to his soldiers. And we tried to figure out what should we do now. And in 2 minutes, he said, I need to take my bag, my miluim, my reserves bag, and to go. And I understood that I have two options. One is to stay alone with our daughter while my husband is gone for a place I don't know. And the other option was also to take a bag and to put her little clothing in it and to go to our parents. And that's what I did. And Shabbat was very hard because first, I'm also a miluim person. I serve in the negotiation unit of the IDF. And while we watched the news in Yair's parents' house, and the pictures and the messages was so confused, but we realized something very, very bad is happening in the south. I started to realize that there are hostages, and that's my professional in the IDF. And I saw the numbers goes up. And I got also, messages on our WhatsApp groups of the Miluim. And I sat there with my baby. And at that moment, I think, started something that was, since then, the whole war, where I keep her and how can I protect her while I'm having my public and my duties to the nation, to the army, to our community.
What's incredible to me is that you founded this forum 6 weeks into the war at a time when I was still very much struggling with my husband being in combat. I'm curious what the experience of founding this forum was. What was the impetus for this forum, and what was the experience of founding it?
So the forum started with a lucky moment. Few mothers who gathered up in a WhatsApp group I got a message from a friend saying, "You're so good in campaigns, you know how to promote policy. We need someone like that." So I joined, and we were 10 mothers, 10 women in this group. And very quickly, I understood that everyone in this group have the same struggles with the same issues that I have in my home, but I felt so alone in that, and there's others. So maybe it's not only me, maybe it's all the reserves family. And then I in that group, we started to think, what should we do? I quickly wrote a strategy because that's what I do. How we can do two things. First, to promote policy for the reserves families. And second, how we can make the public start to realize that we don't have the same lives, that they somehow go back to their lives while the war is keep going, because our husbands, our beloved ones, are away for long, long, long time, and we're alone with everything it says. We're alone at nights. We're alone with our babies, with our children, with managing the house, with keeping our jobs or our everyday work, our businesses. And from that understanding that we're not alone, that it's a national issue, we raised our voice. And the way we did it is, first, that's how I know to work. We wrote a letter to the Ministry of Treasury and to the Minister of Security. And the way we did it, this is a nice moment, because I told you, at the morning I joined the WhatsApp group, we were 10. At the same day, the evening, we were 900. Just realize how strong this problem.
How did that happen?
Each one of us wrote to a group of friends, and they just joined because everyone felt the same, that no one sees us. So with those 900 women, we asked, tell us what the issues, what you're struggling. And there was hundreds of messages, and we collaborate all of them to a paper, a policy paper. And we send it back, and we said, that's what we're going to send to the Minister of Treasury. What do you think about it? And we got some feedbacks, and then we send it. So for me, it was this first time when I'm writing a policy paper wrote by 900 people. And because of that, it was very wide and true program. And for a few weeks, we don't get any response, but we know how to work. So on the same time that we working with the Knesset and sending more letters, we also did a lot of media. And lucky us, we had one of the mothers, she is a spokeswoman. That's her job, like her daily job. She was, as me, in a maternity leave, and she built all the strategy of the media. And in very, very short time, we started to be everywhere. All the national news, Channel 12, Channel 13, Channel 14, everyone started to bring us and hear our stories. And the idea of reserves family started to be something in the public. And just after that, we got a message from the Treasury, the Minister of Treasury office. And we met him. He said, at the beginning of the meeting, he said, I want to thank you, not only because you're holding and fighting for your homes, but because this is the first time when we get such a wide and professional program that we can actually work with. And based on your program, we built our program. And this is the 9 billion program that the Treasury Office historically passed in the government, helping the reserves soldiers and their families. And that was the first step, but we did so much things.
Before we get into what else you've done, I want to first address what have been the biggest needs of IDF wives and their families.
So the economic situation was very hard for some of the families, because managing your house alone without your partner it costs more. You need a babysitter, or you need a cab because you have one car and your husband took it because he's somewhere in the north or somewhere in the Gaza area. And this was one need that was very clear and easy to explain. The second thing was our job, the job market. Unfortunately, everyone was struggling, right, in Israel during the first weeks and also now. And of course, some of the companies are still struggling. But we, as women of reserves soldiers, was facing so much issues at home. Our child is sick, there's no one to be with him. Or, any little thing that you used to have your partner to help you, he's not there. So, of course, it affects our job. And some of the employees, unfortunately, decided to dismiss us or send us to a chalat, which basically it's a dismissal when you're not asked to come back or someone is replacing you and you know that someone else already got your job. And that was it was hard, again, financially, but it was also hard to feel that you're giving so much for the country and the employee doesn't see it. And there was even harder trend that happened not in the few first weeks, but like say 2 or 3 months to the war, that while we were trying to get back to work from our maternity leaves or after we were dismissed, we were asked in the interviews, does your husband serves in Miluim?
Wow.
And when will he come back? And many, many women wrote us. We have more than 5,000 women in our forum. They wrote us, once I said that he's in Miluim, I didn't get the job. It was very clear. And it happened to them in few different interviews into a few different companies.
And that's totally new for Israeli society. Many people think of Israeli society as a place that really respects those in the army. And actually, service in the army, once you get beyond your mandatory service, can be quite challenging when you enter into the job market.
I agree that the Israeli society respects people who serve. But that was too long, and we're not the soldiers. We're not the reserve soldiers. We're just the wives of. And many employees didn't understand it. And that's another aspect that we tried to change in the Israeli society, and also specifically with the employees' bodies and units. And we told them, you need to lead. Part of your leadership right now is to help us keep our families strong. And of course, it's hard. Also, it's not only small companies. You think about some, high-tech or some small businesses. It was also in the government offices that women was called to their managers. And they said, you don't work as you used to. Of course, because I need to do everything at home. Sometimes I can't. That was during, this war was during the winter. We don't used to winter's wars, right? Our children was sick, like every winter, but this time we were alone. And so those two aspects, that was very clear: the economic aspect and the job market. But something much deeper, which is harder to explain and harder to speak about, is the emotional part. First is that we don't get the attention or the understanding of the community. Sometimes even of our families. They don't understand how it's to be day after day for 40 days, for 60 days, for 90 days alone. And that's one thing that we changed by the media, by the social media, by just speaking about it, by making pins that we can walk and say, I'm a reserves family. But the deepest issues of the emotional challenges are still here. And I can divide it into two. Most families, most reserves families struggling with the same issues. The kids they're scared. They're scared that their father is not going to come back, that he's going to die. They don't sleep at night. They stop speaking 4, 5, 6 years old. They just stop speaking. Some of them that doesn't want to go and meet friends or don't want to go to school. They want to stay at home with mom because she's the balance. She can be a figure they can lean on, and they don't want to, face everything that goes in school. Or we got a phone call one day from a mother, and she told us, "Listen, today, the teacher of my kid, she's 9, I think, called me, and she said, your kid just she cried at the not class after class." And I said, "What happened?" And I said, "I don't know. She heard some song. I don't know." So the mother told the teacher, her father is away for 3 months. He's in Gaza. She hasn't seen him for more than a month. And the teacher said, "Oh, I didn't know." Think about her, about this kid. She goes every day to school, and the only grown up who need to care about her in school doesn't know what she's going through in the, like, for so long. For her, it's 3 months.
There's a lot in what you're saying that I want to unpack, but we talk a lot about the kids. Meanwhile, I do believe that the spouses and partners are going through a very similar emotional struggle.
True.
We just are adults and we feel like we have to put on a face and be strong, but there's still the emotional toll of your loved one being at war.
True. I think personally, I didn't accept it or let myself like being weak, because again, I had such a small baby and I need to care about her, and everything was in such a chaos around us. In one of our meeting, my husband and I, when he came back after a few weeks, we had only 24 hours every time. So we spoke about how our souls that was hurt very, very hard on October 7th, and the pictures and the videos and everything we learned after. We didn't have the time to speak about it and to be able to feel this together. It's hard. This is the biggest trauma that our generation for sure went through. But my partner, my beloved one, he needed to struggle with it alone, and I struggled with it alone. And also we see in the emotional issues between partners, it's hard. It's hard to come back every time. It's hard. You're coming from Gaza. You saw such hard things. Now you need to take your baby and and be with him and bath him and hug him, and the conflict or the changes are they're so hard.
Why do you think, when it comes to the government and to Israeli society at large, there's not more empathy for the families of the IDF soldiers?
I think it's very natural that people at first helping, and we saw it in the beginning of the war, there was tens of thousands of volunteers helping to everyone, to the evacuees, helping finding military equipment, bringing food. It was amazing. It felt so strong. But times goes, and after 6 weeks and 7 weeks, and people trying to go back to normal. The thing is that our families did not get back to normal, and this is something that we had to speak about. And it's true that our neighbors, our communities really tried to help. And some of the things that really helped me to go through these times was my family, was Yair's parents, was our community. But it's hard to keep it for a long time. And our husbands are away for 6 months, half a year. So, okay, the first Shabbat, you're making some food, you're bringing to the family, the reserve family next home. Week after 2 months. At some point, the community cannot stand and do everything needed, and sometimes the issues are becoming harder. Okay, we spoke about the emotional struggles. The children of fathers who's away for 6 months, And at the end, most of them, they know that their fathers might get hurt or even die. It's something that it's very hard to explain to someone from the outside, but it's an everyday war at home. It's every day keeping them, helping them to be strong and to go to sleep and not be afraid and to do their homework and to go to meet friends. This is something that the community or whoever wants to help can be aware every day, because people have their lives. And that's why we worked not only to make the awareness, but also with the government, because there are some solutions that have to come from the top. And we need money to go to emotional treatments, because that's what our children need right now. I'm a mother. I'm not a psychologist, right? There's things that we can give our children, but some of the solutions have to come from the outside. And the emotional thing, I want to add one more point about it, because the community and the families can be the most helpful in listening, in guiding, and just be there to hear us and to make us feel that we're not alone. But some of the mental journeys that the soldiers, those fathers, people who left their lives and went to Gaza to combat, and they saw horror things, what they're going through, it's not an easy, okay, I'll just make a phone call to my mom. Sometimes they need more and we need more. And part of our campaign was making the army understand that it's not enough just to have some commander pitch when they're released. No, they need to do much more like deeper and wider tools and workshops, and to really care about them. And fortunately, the army does it. And today, every soldier, reserve soldier or soldier, they're getting a lot of tools and options for treatments and going to, I don't know, like with their unit to out of the country for a few days to process. But still, I see my husband or any of our friends who got back after they released from the reserves. No one called them. And we know, and this is a hard, I told you that the emotional is divided into two, what most families are going through, which is normal, hard, very hard, but normal. And there's the second part. And unfortunately, we getting a lot of messages and calls from women who says, my husband got back. He does not speak. He's very tense. He doesn't want to play with the kids. He's not able to do what he used to be just before the war. I sent him a normal person. And on Shabbat, he hit me. What should I do now? And at first, it was just one story, and then the second story, and then we realized it's a trend. So part of our work is helping the government to understand the reserves family, what are we going through. And the government knows that there's 100,000 families, but they don't know anything else. So we do a lot of surveys since day first. We always survey. And when we start to hear those few stories about domestic abuse, we start to survey. And unfortunately, the numbers are not good. We see much more actions from reserves soldiers who never was in this area, never thought of. I remember one mother, she wrote us, I have 2 kids. One is 3 years old and the other one was just born a few weeks ago. And my husband came back on Shabbat, that's the Shabbat, he slapped me on my face. Now, she is a woman. Think about it. Each one of us, we have families. We believe in this idea of family. We love our family, our children, our partner. And he went away and he's coming back. and it's not the same. Now, think about this conflict. What should she do now? Because they have two very, very young children. She thought, she saw their future together. Now, is her husband he's going through something and maybe she can help him, or he can get some help? Or maybe she needs to go, I don't know, separate for a while, or does she need to divorce? So what should she do now? Think about it. Like, your husband is going to protect the country. He gave his life.
It's an impossible situation. And I know it's for reasons like that and others that you have found in your surveys, that you worked with the government on that 9 billion shekel plan that you proposed. So what was included in that plan, and what type of support and protections are now in place for IDF wives?
So the 9 billion program is only economically aid. Some of the money is it's automatically being paid to the reserves families to keep during this time. Some of it is they're enabling us to send some forms saying we lost the money because of some small things like car or babysitter, or we can even say my business was collapsed, or I lost a lot of money, and the government helps. It doesn't give everything, but it helps. But it's not only the economic aid plan. We worked during the last 6 months about legislation, about many small changes in the legislation that helps women to get 8 days that they can be away from work to anything they need to protect their houses, right?
What's so valuable about those 8 days was, my understanding a little bit, was that you propose them so that when soldiers do come home, women are able to be with their wives, people are able to be with their partners, because it's not so simple to just be able to take off work. There's not a lot of vacation days that people get here in Israel. And when you haven't seen your loved one for a long period of time, to have to work in those 24 hours, that is such a challenge to everybody. And it's also important that when they do come home from war, that they are supported by their loved ones, and that they're not just left alone for the whole day because their wife went to work.
You're right. And this is exactly where our work as a forum that really lives the situation of the reserves families was so effective, because it's not only that we put a lot of pressure to put those 8 days in the contracts between the government and the employees. It's the fine print is to see that it says it's not that you can take this day off, not because your kid is sick, or not because you have something at home to guard. It's because anything that has to do with the reserves, with the miluim. And that allows us to keep our homes strong and to keep our families strong. And this is just one thing. Okay, those 8 days, we did much more. There's so many changes in the policy in Israel today that sees and protect and support the reserves families. And I'll say one more thing. There's a Knesset member in Israel that does not think or realize today the situation, the reality of the reserves families in Israel. And this is something that I couldn't say 50 days since the war started, because no one spoke about us. And today, everyone understands us. And that's the major change that we led.
We've spoken a lot about the successes that the forum has had thus far in the war. What do you see as the future challenges that will need to be addressed?
We understand now that the biggest challenge that the reserves family has is the emotional, because our husbands, some of them came back home, but they're already called to the next reserves period. And it's very hard inside the family. It's very hard for them. Some of them try to go back to their job, but they don't find themselves there. and they there for 2 months, and then they know that they're gonna leave. And it's funny. So our husbands start to say, now I know how it feels to be in maternity leave. That you try to explain your job, why are you away, and it's for a good reason, but there's still job to do. And so I think this the families are struggling with the job market, with the emotional, as we spoke deeply about the different aspects of it. And one last thing that it's about our society is the feeling that we are a very small group of the Israeli society. We're only 2%, these 100,000 families. And the war is going to keep going. And we're asking, where are the others? We want to see more citizens who join the army and helping protect the country, because our families served for the last 6 months, where we know that we're going to keep serve, but the only real help that we can see is not more money, and it's not legislation, and it's not emotional treatments. All of it are very important to keep us strong. But the greatest challenge that we see that is coming is a part of the fact that we're very proud being a reserves families. And I'm very proud of my husband and what he did and what he sacrificed in order to protect our country, and allowing the people who lived in the north that now they don't have their homes anymore. So he worked very hard in allowing them going back home. We understand that it's not enough, that we need more people. And the challenge is how to make more young people in Israel understand that this is what's needed right now. There's many areas of volunteering and NGOs and many ways to help. But whoever can now join the army as a reserve, as a soldier in the army, that's what we need right now, because this war is going to last. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to last for at least a year or two. And our husbands cannot stand alone and keeping this burden for so long. I know that they're all going to keep serving, and they're going to, every time someone will call them, they're there. Okay, there's not a question. But if there's going to be more Miluim people, and we're not going to be only 100,000, only 2% of the society, if it's going to be 5%, the picture is going to look different. Our families are going to be much more free to live, while our husbands need to sometimes go and serve. And that's a challenge that we're still thinking of how can we help to promote, because it's not a legislation. It's something much deeper about the society, about unity and the feeling that we're all together in this challenge and what Israel is facing right now. And I think that a part of doing all our policy, that we're the best in this. That's the challenge that right now we're sitting and think, how can we help and lead others to fill this role that they're also a part of, and not only us.
There's so much that we can unpack and discuss. If there was one takeaway that you could give to somebody who knows somebody who is an IDF wife, what's that one piece of advice you would give to somebody of how best to support that woman, that spouse, that partner?
Check every week how she is and be proactive. Not ask, tell me when you need something, or tell me what you need. Just come with food, come with a hug, come with anything you can and want to give. I can tell personally that a friend from my community, from where we live, she just came every week for a coffee. She said, I want to come to coffee. It's okay. And I say, yeah. And somehow every time she came, it was just the time when I prepared Yara, my daughter, to sleep. And that was such a dramatic thing for me, because I knew that there is one day every week that I'm not alone, that someone can take Yara with towel after a bath, and I can prepare her food. And I don't need to do everything, alone. And at first I didn't understood that that's what she's doing. But after the third or the fourth time, I said, oh, she's coming every time in the same hour. And then I realized, and it helped me a lot. First, it just helped me technically, but it helped me. It really. So I think that's the thing. To be able to think about those families as we've been in November. I'm going to help you the same as I helped in November, because for you, the reality hasn't changed a lot. Your husband is still away. You're still worried. Maybe you're not sleep at night. Your children are worried. Your family or your house is still needs someone to manage it, and you're struggling. So I'm going to be for you in what I can help. Like I thought about you in November, even though we're in May.
The forum received a very high honor this Independence Day. A representative was a torchbearer for the official Independence Day ceremony. And it's a testament to the impact that you're having on Israeli society at large. How do you see Israel at a societal level? How is it changing during wartime?
It unites us at first. And after a while, we start to see again these two groups saying that each one, the other one is blame in what we're going through, and the other one is the one to ruin the democracy or ruin the future of Israel. And I think much deeper statement is that it's not that I don't agree with you, it's that I don't want to sit with you. We don't share the same identities. You're not someone that I can trust. But the war show us, and our husbands show us, that you can fight together. And you're sitting in a tank, and you have such a wide political views, and you're still fighting together. And you still care, and you still can work together, and you can agree on what should be done and what's not. And these are the people that you need to trust. And I think that today we see in Israel this starting of new trend of most of the citizens, not the extremes. The extremes, I think, are scared or are more even extreme by this time. But the 70, the 80% that now says unity is important as security, because when we don't have unity, we don't have security. Unity, it's not something that we want to have in the future. Maybe it's the the Maslow pyramid. It's not the top knot. It's in the bottom. And if I want unity, I understand that I need to have some compromise, and compromise is some of my values. So this is a very important depth that I see now. I feel it. I feel it from the Miluim people. They said, I don't know one person who came back from reserves who does not speak that language. And I'll add one more thing, is not only that now we understand how much unity is important, but we also realized that we're not so apart. The ideology is much closer than we thought. I think US citizens can empathize with that. That today, when we think about a society, there's two groups and they're apart. But what we discovered, that there's no two groups. Maybe identity, we said, we're left, we're right, we cannot sit together. But when you look ideology, and practically, most of the citizens in Israel, very close. On any issue that you'll raise, I can show you that most of the people from the, Yesh Atid and even lefter than that, to the Likud and if they're righter than that, we agree. But we couldn't sit because we were led by the extremes and by the fact that we shaped our society or our thoughts about the society as two groups. And that's what the war changed. And that's what the Miluim people, the reserves people shows us now, that have much more in common, and that the Israeli nation is united. And this bigger group, this 70-80%, can structure a common vision and common plans and maybe a common government. And that's a big change, that I'm happy that that's what we're deciding to take from October 7th.
The final question that every guest on this show gets is, what is giving you hope today?
This morning, I saw my daughter wake up in the morning, and she smiled. A huge smile. The smile says, I love life. I want to know everything. I want to feel. And she's 9 months old now. And I think that in some points during the war, I was so afraid. I afraid on her life. I was afraid that we won't be able to succeed to go through those times. But in some way, I was much more afraid during 2023, when there was no path. There was none of vision how we can stop fighting each other inside. And when I looked at her this morning, I had a very clear feeling that she's going to live here. She's going to live here in democratic, Jewish, liberal state. She's going to live with varied society, but a society that wants and choose to live together. Maybe before October 7th, that I thought that I wasn't as sure. And today, even though we went through such hard times and our enemies, they keep hurting us and they're here. And unfortunately, we're still going to be surrounded by enemies for many years. I know today that the strength of the Israeli society is being able not only to combat together, but also to build together. And it's just the beginning. Those processes are taking time. And I guess we'll see it in the next elections, and we'll see it in the way that Israel is behaving as a society. But I truly believe that my daughter is going to live here happily. She's going to be a generation that is not struggling in between, but is struggling how to build a better economy, how to build a better education system, how to be part of greater things that happens in the world. And I truly hope that she's not gonna feel anymore when she grow up this inside. So what gives me hope? That my daughter is gonna grow up here happily and secured, knowing that many others in Israel are not like her, but wants to live with her and to build with her future. And that's what we almost lost in 2023. But I think our enemies helped us to get a very strong reminder that we are here to stay together, strong, and united.
Sapir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Thank you to Naomi Studios, and thank you to all of you for tuning in today. We salute the IDF soldiers and their families. If you'd like to know more about the Homefront podcast, follow us on social media. And if you want to support the people of Israel, I do recommend that you go ahead and smash that subscribe button. We'll see you on the next episode.